My name is Dave Moss. I reside at 1510 Fairmount Avenue South here in Salem. And I had distributed to you on your desk earlier a little packet, so I won't read it. I'd just like to touch a couple of highlights. First of all, included in that packet was a copy of the city staff report from 1985, where this little L-shaped alley was kept specifically to put in a bicycle pedestrian path through from rural to Hoyt Street. And so this alley has, at least for 20 years, been considered that that's the purpose of it. This is Amendment 62 in the Transportation Plan. Safety alone makes this a valuable proposal. You heard earlier from Mr. Harmon, and thank you very much. I had never met Mr. Harmon before, but safety is an issue on Commercial Street. And one of my neighbors, and I mentioned in my packet, she has a daughter that she'd love to have ride over to her relatives over in Candleraria, but will not let her go down to Commercial Street for very good reasons. I mean, that's just not safe. Connection between the two neighborhoods and connecting Candleraria with the downtown and connecting Fairmount with the areas to the south is a very important consideration. And these are all considerations in your transportation plan, your bicycle plan, and your comp plan. And we believe that this proposal meets those goals and objectives that you have in your plans. As far as the issue of safety and all of this, when I was sat on the council, I can't tell you how many times the police came and said the best measure we can have to prevent crime is eyes on the street. People out walking, looking, and seeing. And I can assure you that having lived in the Fairmount Hill area for 25 years, there is a very large and growing culture of walking and biking in that area. I personally walk over 3 miles a day in that neighborhood, and there are probably 40 people that are out walking at any given time throughout the day, and they all, when I talk to them about this, say, gee, that'd be great to be able to get all the way south or wander through the cemetery or whatever else there might be. And so and this is people to the south. As a matter of fact, I spoke with former Justice Ed Peterson yesterday, and he would love to have a pathway to walk through. I would like to just point out one thing. You have in your packet a correspondence from the Scan neighborhood, and in that they said that they had a transportation subcommittee that talked to the neighbors. I have more land abutting this alley than anybody. I have 3 times as much land as anybody, or abutting line as anybody. They did not speak to me one bit. And the Scan vote was a 5-4 vote. And I don't think that shows overwhelming opposition to this proposal. The only other thing I'd like to point out is that you've heard several times that this is an easement. It is not an easement. The alley in question is, in fact, a right-of-way. It has been fenced in by the abutting neighbors on the west, and public access has been denied for their own personal private access. And I'll leave it at that unless there are any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions for Mr. Moss? Councillor DeHart.
Thank you for your input. I was wondering, this right-of-way borders your west side and the south side of your property?
That's correct.
And you're not concerned about the safety issues like your neighbors are?
I actually believe safety will be enhanced as people walk and are out there. I know the Pioneer Cemetery folks at the Planning Commission were supportive of this. They had some concerns about dealing with the vandalism, and I would listen very carefully to any of their concerns, and if they opposed it, I would not be asking for this, but they did not oppose it. And if they have any suggestions for conditions for this path, I would listen very carefully to those suggestions for conditions, because they have the most at stake.
I understand. Would this path only include the portion of the right-of-way that is to the west of your property, on the west side of your property, and not the one that's on the north side of the cemetery, but actually the one that runs north south?
Would it use the full L? The reason for the L is that as it goes south from rural, it actually goes straight at City View Cemetery. And the L part was maintained when the alley was vacated farther down in order to get down to Pioneer Cemetery. And so it overlaps about 20 feet of Pioneer Cemetery. Thank you.
Councillor Rogers.
Mr. Moss, in the cemetery properties between the two, is there a double fence there now that creates a path that goes through there? What's that look like?
No, between the two cemeteries, between Pioneer and City View, there is a single chain link fence that runs north-south along their property line. and I'd rather have the Pioneer Cemetery. I believe Ms. Potter is here this evening and could address Pioneer Cemetery issues.
In the divisiveness and kind of bringing both sides together, perhaps?
Well, I start from the point that the public right-of-way is available for the public, not for the private use of some abutting property owners. I happen to live in a place that has a 10-foot alley that runs along my back yard, and it feeds 2 more houses. And I don't believe that I can expand my back patio and cut off access for those 2 houses and just say, well, I want the land for myself. That's a public right-of-way. It is open to the public. Right now, this public right-of-way has been closed to the public by 3 private property owners. And that's according to a professional survey done by landmarkers.
Thank you, Dave.
Councillor Clem.
Dave, if the transportation system plan is not amended to open this up as a pedestrian bike path, should the city vacate that right away then somehow? What would you recommend with your expertise?
I'd recommend including this in the transportation plan.
But if we didn't?
I'm not looking at further steps. You know, this is interesting. This used to be in the transportation plan, and I have no idea when it fell out. It always used to be there, and I was surprised. I own the 2 properties that abut essentially on the east side, and when we were looking at developing our property, we were saying, gee, well, that'd be kind of neat to go ahead and build the path that the city's always wanted. And I looked at the plan, and it's not there. And that surprised me, and so I don't know how it fell out. And all I'm doing is asking that perhaps you put it back in, because it was a good idea back in the 80s when I was on the SCAN Board of Directors. And it was a good idea when I was on the City Council, and it's still a good idea. I don't know how it fell out.
Yes, Councillor Naki.
Yeah, and just to address the premise that it's right away and it's being unduly blocked, I'll be asking staff about that. Because I heard a whole bunch of other, Russell behind me here as soon as you said that.
And Councillor Naki.
So, I mean, we need to understand that.
Absolutely, I agree. You ask your staff, that's fine. That's what we did. We asked the staff, and the staff said, yes, that's an alley right-of-way, and yes, it's on. And as a matter of fact, the City of Salem Public Works Department over a year ago sent a letter to the affected property owners saying that, in fact, there is a 12-foot wide alley right-of-way, and that they may have to remove the fences that are blocking it.